not having to be emotionally involved in the tragedies of life, that we can step back and look at it separately and it doesn't define who we are. I have the quotations, okay? When I went to Pastor Rick Wilson's funeral, I predicted that it would be very stoic, not a wet eye in the place, okay, because all of these people that I've known for years and years and years, they've progressed in this theology, and here's what I predicted this funeral would be. Very stoic, okay, very light, and I was right. And the paramount experience of the funeral was seeing his very own son get up and bragging about his father being a, quote, wicked sinner. Okay? So what's going on when a pastor's son gets up and tells a packed auditorium of 400 or 500 people that his father was a, quote, wicked sinner? Well, what's going on? Okay, this philosophy and, quote, worldview is what's going on. God help us. Okay? So, he says up here, so far we have the gospel narrative, redemptive historical hermeneutics, just, a way of looking at the world. We have the emphasis hermeneutic, and we have the Christian life as an experience only. You see these points here? These are all Gnostic points. This is Gnosticism on steroids. This is Gnosticism dressed up in Bible verses. Okay? We have 4 points here in this article that are expressly Gnostic. Okay? Now, and here's the last one. Okay? He says, in concluding thoughts, the strength of Peterson's proposal, notice it's a proposal. This drives me crazy. Okay? 2,000 years later, we're throwing proposals around. Really? And we wonder why Christianity, as it's called, is a mess. Okay? So basically, he says the strength of Peterson's proposal is his reliance on eschatological categories, and listen, the doctrine of the vital, of our union with Christ. Our union with Christ. What's that? That is the Reformed doctrine of the, quote, vital union. That was the theme of the conference in Minneapolis, where I was going to go up there and this time confront and interview the pastors face to face about the vital union and what it really means. Unfortunately, we didn't make it up there. Okay, what is the vital union? Well, we have another reader who sent me an email who is going to help us. Okay? And since this is posted publicly, I'll use her name. It is Gail. And she says, Paul, this article brought to mind a teaching that I was taught by a pastor, that our sanctification comes as we abide in the vine. Okay? In other words, he explained that peaches hanging on a tree didn't struggle or strive to be peaches. The fact that they abide in the branch bore the fruit, okay? And thereby we too are sanctified. I understood that all we had to do was rest in the Spirit doing His work in us to sanctify us. And we won't get into the discussion of no, it's not really in us, okay? And that's a whole nother discussion, right?
Right.
It's only in us in as far as we experience it in us. When you're outside in the cold pouring rain, of course you experience the coldness and the wetness of the rain inside, but it's going on outside of you and you have no control over the rain. Okay, the same thing. Same Gnostic worldview. Okay, the shadows are only experienced. Okay, anyway, okay, so he explained that peaches hanging on a tree didn't struggle or strive to be peaches. The fact that they abided in the branches bore the fruit, and thereby we too are sanctified. I understand that all we had to do was rest in the Spirit, doing His work in us to sanctify this. Thus, I believed that I was unable to do anything, okay? Only experience it by abiding. Now, according to Reformation traditions, how do we abide? By reading our Bible, looking for, John Piper, Christ's salvific works, plural, okay? That way. Because as we see the salvific works of Christ, okay, those works are manifested to us. We experience them. Being faithful to church, being nice to your elder, submitting to the authority of your elders, tithing, right, and prayer, okay. Whatever they see is passive. So basically what they're dissecting is, and this is age-old, the idea that we can live by faith alone in our sanctification, and sanctification is John Calvin's Sabbath rest, by defining passive endeavors is faith alone. Okay? Prayer is faith alone. Tithing is faith alone. Being faithful to the church is faith alone. Going there every time their doors are open, that's not a work. Submitting to your elder, that's not a work. Submitting to an elder, especially when he's a reformed lame brain, can be very difficult. That's hard work. Okay? So basically what they've done, since salvation is a golden chain, now we got to define what is a work in the middle of the chain and what isn't a work in the middle of the chain. Because if we don't do that and abide, this justification process is interrupted. And when we stand in this last judgment, we're not going to be perceived as covered by the righteousness of Christ. Okay? So, there you have these tenets. Now what it is, and I'll conclude with this, okay? And by the way, here's another question, proper interpretive question. Is the Christian life a rest or not? As Christians, is our rest future or is it now? Okay? And Reformed pastors, I used to go to the conferences and eat with them and whine and moan and cry like little stinking babies about, 10% of God's people do 90% of the work. Well, you think? Okay? It's a Sabbath rest, bozo. What do you expect? Okay? So, and of course I address this, and it's not about election, okay, in that Calvin believed clearly that sanctification was a, quote, Sabbath rest, and that's addressed in the book, okay? So this is all upside down. This is all upside down, okay? And forgive the adjectives, but I find myself I'm angry about, here's why I'm angry. Am I angry this morning? I think I am.
Agitated.
Agitated. Why? Because I've come to a point in this ministry where I understand that these guys know what they're doing. This guy knows what he's doing. When he uses these terms, he knows these terms aren't being interpreted the way he knows what the Reformation interpretation actually is. Okay? And here's where my agitation's coming in. They know what they're doing. Al Mohler knows what he's doing. This is deliberate, outright deception. Okay? Because they think they know better. Okay? And they can't be truthful with the great unwashed masses. Okay? Because the poor little helpless sheep would go into chaos. Okay? We can only reveal the hard truths of the true Reformation, the scandalous gospel. We have to spoon feed the poor little sheep, or they'll panic and run all over the place. Okay? So in mythology we call it the noble lie. Okay? But okay. That is what I wanted to address. By the way, I have other things here that I'm not going to take the time to go into. But, by the way, How People Change by Paul David Tripp is, lots of people comment to me, Paul, I tried to read that book and I just don't get it. If you understand Reformed metaphysics, Reformed philosophy, this makes perfect sense. He talks about big picture interpretation where he gets all into the divine drama and how faith is really just putting yourself into the narrative and seeing it all as a videotape or a pre-scripted movie by God to bring himself glory for the sake of his self-love, on and on and on and on and on. The book is not so torturous if you know from what perspective and worldview they're coming from. Okay? So.
Well, the comment I want to make here is that the article by Trevin Wax is about David Peterson's book, Possessed by God. Whether or not Trevin Wax believes David Peterson in this article is not evident. So we want
it never is.
We want to be careful that we don't want to make that claim, but the focus is definitely here that David Peterson, in his book, Possessed by God, has really created a very Gnostic point of view here about sanctification, and he wants us to swallow it as God's Word. And a closing comment I personally want to make is, I have a coworker that is Jewish, and we have a very good friendship. And I find it special that of all of the professing believers there, when she wants to share something of her Jewishness and how something in her, either a Rosh Hashanah celebration or a Hanukkah celebration that she has done with her family, she comes and shares that with me. Because she has said, Susan, because you know Yahweh. And we know because we know the God of Scripture.
Right.
Not the God of the institutional church.
Or the God of Gnosticism.
Of Gnosticism.
Right. Now, the only place I would differ with you is he said, that the book is a good
Good
contribution to the ongoing discussion on the nature of sanctification and the pastoral wisdom of knowing where to put the emphasis when discipling believers. I think all told, he's agreeing with Peterson that it's strictly and see, honey, this is what they do. Using the emphasis hermeneutic, the reason you say he's not taking a position, he doesn't have to. J.C. Ryle, what J.C. Ryle, listen, I don't know how many times I've heard this come out of Reformed mouths. Oh, J.C. Ryle is absolutely correct. Okay? It is a process. But the question is, where should we put the emphasis? Well, we should put the emphasis on the position. Well, what people don't understand is what he said in essence. What he is really saying is essence is what J.C. Ryle is saying is not necessarily untrue. It's just irrelevant. The only truth that is relevant is this, the fact that it's strictly a position and that we only experience focusing on the position. It's like the Time Warner commercial where the guys say to Coach Cowden, that's great information, but it's not relevant to our case. Same thing, in essence. Okay? So, again, the goal of ongoing reformation from this construct is not so much that the sheep understand it, but that they function that way. Okay? Yes, sheeplings, all of this stuff is true, but here's where we want you to put the focus. What that results in them is functioning in a way that feeds the institutional church where they make their living. And that's a part of this. Okay? So, with that said, are we ready to pack up and move to Dayton?
Yes, we are.
We are. Okay. If you want to hit our machine, we will pick up and head that way.